Good morning. This is Michelle Love, and you're listening to Dynamic Change on KPCALP in Petaluma, a free range radio and TV station. Thank you for joining me this morning. I hope you're enjoying the rain. I think it's very beautiful outside today. And what I do with this show is I'm a certified wellness coach, self-defense instructor, fitness trainer, and I have a degree in psychology. And I've worked in the wellness field for over 30 years. And if you would like more information on the classes and things that I do, you can go to my website, which is dynamicchangewellness.com. And I do upload all these shows that I do every week on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock to my YouTube station, which is it's Michelle Love with dynamicchangewellness.com. So today, I would like to talk about this show is to help facilitate having more wellness in your life. I bring up psychological patterns and emotional patterns that we can have in our lives and how we can work with that to have a healthier pattern, to heal the things that need to be healed and to move forward in a way that will provide us more wellness, more satisfaction in our lives, have us have healthier boundaries for ourselves, so we just feel more empowered and more centered within ourselves. So today, what I'm going to talk about is blaming ourselves, and then also blaming others, and how that can kind of affect our feelings about ourselves and our feelings about others. So what I would like to start out with is when we blame ourselves. So when we blame ourselves, so if, like, I'm going to give an example. I make up examples of imaginary people and just to kind of give a very generalized example of how this can play out. So the name I'm going to choose today is Pamela. So with my imaginary person, Pamela, my example is that she's a mom, and let's say she has a teenage daughter, and this daughter is starting to date, because that's a really complicated time, and I can speak from experience as a mom that it can be really challenging. So the example I want to give for Pamela is let's just say that her daughter is about 15, 16 years old, is wanting to start to date, and they have the child there's a boy at school that's interested in them. They start to date this boy, and the mom asked the boy to come to the home, met the boy, talked to the boy, and he seemed like a nice person. And not to say he's a bad person, but the mom really their effort was to really try to have their daughter's back. Pamela was like, well, okay, I'm gonna try and see if I can get a good feeling for this person, make him show up as a healthy, strong, empowered young man, coming to the home, meeting the parents, and to really see if he seemed like a good influence for her daughter, and to try to get to know him. So let's just say that Pamela did some things, and I'll have to do a show on this later on, more parenting things, but made a lot of efforts of have him come to the home as much as possible, make sure he was always escorting her home, always knowing where the kids were going, and making sure the environment seemed conducive to healthy boundaries for her daughter's, age group. that it wasn't, you know, too much pressure for intimacy, like maybe they're going to the movies, just getting to know each other, which I think is really a healthy, even though it's very old school and maybe very traditional. I will say that I do believe getting, allowing and supporting an environment where our teens are able to get to know each other without diving so fast into intimacy, because I think today with society, with the cell phones, with social media, I think a lot of times those kinds of pressures come on even earlier than they did back in the day. So I think it's really wonderful when parents are trying to, create a space, and it doesn't mean it's going to work. You're not always going to get your way as a parent, that's for sure, but trying to create and facilitate and support that getting to know each other and doing things with the family, including that partner as much as the daughter is comfortable, to have this sense of getting to know each other and almost accountability for that process for this person that her daughter is starting to include in their life. I think that's really valuable. So let's say that Pamela, this imaginary person I made up, did the best they could with trying to get to know this person, trying to see what kind of caliber of person he was, if he seemed respectful, like a good mate, had some values, and just trying to tune in as much as her daughter felt comfortable. And she also raised her daughter to constantly understand, healthy boundaries with dating, and kind of what a healthy partner should look like. And again, I'll do a whole show on healthy partners and raising your kids, because I think that's a really important topic. But anyway, so what ends up playing out is Pamela's teenage daughter dates this person, and over a certain amount of time realizes this person is not not as sensitive to their feelings as they would have hoped, and is, just not showing up for them emotionally, and just not proving to be mature or respectful enough, and is maybe not as loyal as they would like, and just not showing up as good friendship material. And I do think that's really important when we're looking for our mates, and also when we're trying to do what we can to teach our kids, and the kids, they're only going to listen so much once they get to teenager age, but trying to show them that our mate should be able to be our friends, and should be able to be someone that would make a loyal, honest, showing up for you, have your back kind of friend too. And so you have healthy intimacy later on when it gets to that point. But in learning what a healthy mate looks like and healthy intimacy looks like, there's some, I think often it's like a learning curve, right? So let's just say that Pamela's daughter felt very hurt and kind of disappointed that it wasn't what their daughter was looking for. And so there was this learning experience. And so let's say Pamela's daughter's name is Dawn. So Pamela's daughter, Dawn, is 15 years old, and these imaginary people, Dawn was dating and felt discouraged and heartbroken and not respected by this person they were trying to date with. They didn't turn out to be what they were looking for. So Pamela, let's just say Pamela really blamed themselves for it. Let's say Pamela was like, wow, I wish I could have saved my daughter from this experience. And so, what I'm talking about today is when we blame ourselves. And what does that do? So, when Pamela blames herself for the situation, it takes away from Pamela's power, personal power, because Pamela did everything they could think of to show up for their daughter Dawn and to do everything they could to kind of try to observe this potential partner that Dawn was starting to date, to do everything they could that they could think of to get, try to judge his character, try to be there for their daughter. And that was all very empowering things they did for their daughter. They were coming up with ideas maybe they didn't even get when they were a kid from their own parents, and they were really trying to step it up. So Pamela really did everything they knew how to do to empower their daughter Dawn, to model healthy, boundaries, to model all the knowledge they had of what a healthy partner would look like, or a healthy friendship that turned into a partnership should look like. Really did everything they could. So, but Pamela still felt like took on the responsibility for how upset their daughter Dawn was by this situation. So when Pamela blames herself, and puts themselves down. So when Pamela blames herself, it's like she's putting herself down. And what that does is when we have internal language, and internal communication within ourselves, internal talking, where we're putting ourselves down, it is discouraging for the future. Like maybe it's going to hold ourselves back from, stepping up to the plate again, because we'll feel like, oh, I just failed that time. I was not able to help my daughter. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I'm not a good parent. If Pamela has this kind of communication with herself, it could really prohibit her being available the next time. And it models putting herself down to her daughter, to Dawn. And it also gets in the way of our personal power. So there's a lot of things that happen. So when we are putting ourselves down, judging ourselves harshly, this gets in the way of us feeling empowered the next time. It gets in the way of us expressing ourselves in the most 100% powerful way. It diminishes our feelings about ourselves and also what we represent and present to the world. So when we are having this self-judgment, putting ourselves down, it creates a really negative feeling, the blaming of the self. And I think in society, especially with women, a lot of times there's like this kind of unconscious agreement in society that if the woman is the martyr, that it makes you a better woman. And I think I should really speak to that for a moment, because we have these kind of unspoken agreements, I think, in our society, in the American society, that in order to be a good woman, that if we are not perfect, which no one is perfect, I don't care what gender you are, I just don't care. I mean, these ideals that we have that are very old really put a lot of pressure on being perfect. And I think men have them too. And I think we should speak to that a little bit for a moment. So if we are speaking to the ideal that a good woman has to be perfect and what being perfect means, that if you cannot accommodate the situation 100%, couldn't sacrifice yourself 100%, then you are required to blame yourself, put yourself down in some way to be that good woman. So let's talk about that. I love that my brain went there. I was trying to go there, but sometimes I develop the concept as I'm talking. So I really want to talk about that. When we are kind of beating ourselves up, that symbolic, well, if I couldn't do it perfect, which is completely unrealistic, completely not speaking to our humanity, completely not speaking to being compassionate with ourselves, but I think it is a very developed subconscious, kind of unconscious behavior in our society of when I cannot be perfect, then I must put myself down within my psyche, within my emotional body, within my language, within my thoughts. This is so self-harming. And I want to speak to that because it hurts us. It's unproductive. It's not attractive. It's really a bogus ideal. It shouldn't be an ideal. It's self-harming. And I do think it's a very practiced, subconscious thing that society has built, has bought into. And I have great faith for the younger generations because I think they don't always have that kind of brainwashed, subconscious, unconscious, collective conscious ideas. So I think they are going to be free of a lot of this stuff. And I am so grateful for them. I'm so happy for them. But I am talking to my generation and sometimes, past generations and how it does trickle down and sometimes keep perpetuating to some extent to the younger people that are coming in with those fresh minds and emotional ideas. But let's talk about that blaming of the self and how that is self-harming. So this pressure to be perfect. So my imaginary person I brought up is Pamela. And again, my name is Michelle Love, and you are listening to Dynamic Change on KPCA-LP in Petaluma, a free-range radio and TV station. I am talking about self-blame and blaming that kind of category in general. And my imaginary people I made up today are Pamela, and she has a teenage daughter, Dawn. And Pamela is blaming herself for not being able to recognize that Dawn's first boyfriend ended up to not be a good candidate. And Pamela really did everything they could with their own emotional index and repertoire and life experience to really put any input she could as a mom of whether or not Dawn's first boyfriend was a good candidate or not, and was deserved to kind of have her consent to date her daughter. So what the pressure is on for Pamela. So Pamela, when Dawn realized that this first boyfriend ended up not being a good candidate and was hurtful and went through some life experience lessons that were very painful, Pam's really blaming herself. So this internal dialogue of blaming ourselves and then putting ourselves down and then second guessing ourselves takes away from Pamela's personal power, empowerment, her identity of self. And I'm speaking to the self-harm, unconscious belief pattern, collective belief pattern in our society that a woman, in order to be a good woman, has to then, beat on themselves with the whip, right? Put themselves down. Sometimes I've even heard women verbally put themselves down to other people to, I think, fill that quota of I must put myself down when I am imperfect in order to maintain that idea of being what it takes to be a good woman. So that idea of a good woman, let's just throw that in the trash, because these are really unrealistic, unkind, unloving, hurtful, harmful, self-harming ideas. And these ideas, I think, in society are perpetuating this harmful, self-harmful, societal harmful ideas that are old, archaic, and are very unhealthy. And I think that let's throw that one away. So Pamela is noticing the effect of when she was buying into this concept, and she was realizing how she started to tell her friend, she was talking to her friend about it, another mom, and Pamela's talking to this other mom, and she's saying, wow, I couldn't be a good mom in that moment. So this is what Pamela's doing, my imaginary person. Pamela is putting herself down because her daughter Dawn had this life lesson of getting hurt from this first boyfriend, and Pamela's talking to her friend. She's putting herself down, saying, I just wasn't a good enough mother. No matter what I do, I just, I'm not smart enough. I just can't, my daughter's moving into sexuality, and dating, and I just feel like I can't protect her. I feel like a failure. And her friend, let's just say her friend, this wonderful friend, I love this friend. And the friend tells her, I don't like it when you put yourself down. I love that. I love that. I don't like it when you put yourself down. I think that is unnecessary. I think you're an amazing mother. And I think you hurt yourself when you put yourself down, saying this, thinking this, and feeling this. I love friends like this. Call them out. And call your friends out. Sometimes we have these moments in life where we beat ourselves up. And I love being that friend that will say, I don't like this behavior. I don't like this, thought processes. And I want to tell you, you deserve better. So I think that's a really powerful thing to do for people in our lives, and to tell them you can give them permission to do it for you, because sometimes we have these internal dialogues. They are unhealthy. They serve no one. Punishing yourself does not help so let's just say Pamela punishing herself doesn't even have any positive effect at all on her daughter Dawn. So this pattern of sacrificing yourself, beating yourself up, putting yourself down is negative 100% in every angle. Every possible way it can play out, it is only hurting Pamela. It is only perpetuating these unconscious beliefs in society that to be a good woman, you must put yourself down, punish yourself, verbally put yourself down, think negative thoughts about yourself when you could not be perfect, and you could somehow frame it like you failed. It's all total crap. None of that is healthy. None of that creates a supportive, loving society for women. And none of that actually models for her daughter how wonderful Pamela actually is. Pamela is amazing. Pamela was doing everything she could. She modeled for her daughter everything that she could possibly think of to support a healthy container for her daughter's moving into intimacy issues and sexuality as a young woman. And modeling that for our kids, for our daughters, is so powerful, because there is no failure. What we are modeling is the effort to be there for our younger people, to be engaged, to model that there are standards. There should be standards for the people you consider dating. And do the best you can to try to figure out that person. And maybe modeling that helped Dawn figure it out sooner than later. You may remember back in the day where none of us understood a lot of these things. I wish we all did. And I think some people got it right, and I really honor you. And I really honor the people that already knew these things. But I do think the American culture, kind of the very, very, very old school did a lot of those things, but they also had a lot of unconscious beliefs within the society of they had to be a good woman, and they were just, not empowering the female, which, I want to see everyone empowered, the female, the masculine, everything in between. I want to see everyone empowered. So to bring it up to modern times of having these practices where we support our younger people in a way where we have that close-knit family, whatever is appropriate, that's not suppressing that younger person kind of learning, right? But also like not just letting the teenager do whatever, and just really being present and really engaged with that situation, and also not beating ourselves up as we are moving forward in a way where there's only so much you can do at a certain point as the teenager grows up. So I love Pamela's friend. Pamela's friend calls this out, this pattern out that Pamela's doing. They're saying, look, you're putting yourself down. I don't like it. Stop it. How can we look at this another way? And so Pamela gets this wonderful feedback from her friend, which was very helpful. So we look at the effect on Pamela. So if Pamela can really digest this feedback from this fantastic friend, we should all have a friend like this, and give your friends permission to do this. That's what I recommend. And do it as often as you can with others. It's so much more compassionate and kind and empowering. So Pamela now looks at it like, yes, I did everything I could to figure that out. Yes, I modeled, problem solving in a way where you're looking at what kind of person are you dealing with? Do they have the qualities that you're looking for in a mate, where you want to have a mate that communicates well, a mate that is respectful and wants to be your friend first? Is this a partner that is protective, that is understanding, when you do have emotions, and, takes the time, cares what your emotions are in response to the situation? Is this a partner that's intelligent? Or maybe you wanted someone athletic like you, or does a particular hobby like you, or you want someone that's a bookworm like you, whatever it is. Did Pamela do everything that she could think of? Yes, then that is amazing, because you can only do everything you can think of and emotionally come up with and problem solve in that moment. And that is a huge win. And so let's be done with Pamela. So Pamela gets this on a deep level, and she realized what she was projecting on to her daughter Dawn was not only modeling this kind of self-blame stuff, which is harmful on the self-image and her inner emotional self and what you present in the world. She realized, oh, I'm going to clean this up, because I want to model for my daughter the empowered feminine, the empowerment of what you learn in life. Because we're all going to have situations that end up being painful. And that's how we learn. It's okay. Life has a certain amount of trauma, life has a certain amount of pain, but all this stuff can be embraced in a way where we feel empowered, in a way that we learn deeply from it, in a way where we don't have to keep repeating the pattern. So Pamela digests all of this, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna really turn this around and show my daughter the empowered example of, you know, this scenario. So Pamela's like, okay, I am going to show my daughter that I feel good about myself as a parent. Let's start there. You know, so whatever you emotionally believe, other people feel it. So if Pamela believes all this stuff, right, her daughter's going to imprint on that and feel that. So if Pamela can turn it around and start doing some internal dialogue of, you know what, we are amazing, we did such a good job, and we're going to learn from this. So next time Dawn brings another person around that they're thinking of dating, maybe I can be a little more insightful, a little more savvy, maybe look at where I didn't quite see what was needed in that moment, because that's not bad. You know, judging someone, you can't see everything that first time around. Usually it takes time to kind of see things, and that's okay, and it's a learning. So Pamela decided, okay, next time I'm going to talk about Dawn and say, you know what I realized from that situation was, I know you are a powerful young lady. She tells her daughter Dawn, you are a powerful young lady. And I know it hurts when we have to like go through that first heartbreak, but you know, just try to take notice of what you would prefer next time. And what I noticed as your mom was, next time I am going to pay attention to how much this person that you bring home wants to engage with me. Because I think a good partner, a good potential partner for you, for my daughter Dawn, right? This imaginary person, Pamela tells her daughter, their potential partner, their heart would be open, and it would look, when they have that open heart, they would really, it would be so obvious that I would be able to feel it, and you would be able to feel it, and they would want to engage with me because it would be important to them to have a mature kind of connection of what they present to, you know, the parents in that situation. That, you know, even though they're young people, teenagers are young people, and they're still learning, that they would have some level of decorum of wanting to present well, and it would feel authentic, it would feel engaged, you know, because I think that's one of the challenging things, is learning how to express to our kids, what does it look like when your partner is engaged, emotionally engaged with you, where their heart is open, where they care about your feelings, and they are mature enough to communicate with the parents in a respectful, you know, open way where nothing's hidden. You know, when the heart is closed down, it has a very different feeling. And so that's the learning. So Pamela, you know, is just talking to her daughter and saying, I want to respect your privacy, but, you know, so if you don't want to talk about this, it's fine. But I just wanted to tell you my input. If you could just listen, and if it helps you, then great. But I just wanted to let you know, this is what I for me was important. If there's anything else you need support-wise, next time let me know. but these are my ideas of just, next time I'm just going to talk to, let's say, my I might get feedback from some males I respect, your father, my brother, and just kind of ask them, well, what does it look like when a young man, in case she brings a young man around again, what does it look like when their heart is really open and they're emotionally engaged? What else should I be looking for? And do you have any feedback? And so just kind of putting that out there that, her daughter Dawn could also talk to the father and get their input, could also talk to their uncle, and just kind of getting as much input as possible, because there's no way we can know everything. And trying to have this requirement that that we should know everything, that there's nothing for us to learn, and if we don't know it, in order to be a good person, we got to beat ourselves up is just really unhealthy. So you just want to really present these ideas that are very open to the kid. So Pamela could tell her daughter, you could get feedback from other people, but I would recommend to empower her daughter, because if Pamela is blaming herself and trying to put the responsibility of the situation on herself, it is not accurate. The responsibility is really on the young man that, didn't show up in a good way. And so looking at the situation honestly and say, okay, well, that was really on him. So just put that there and say, and let the negativity go. And say, okay, well, we can, doesn't mean we excuse that person for maybe they had bad behavior or something like that, but we say that's on them. It's not anything on Pamela that's on her that he chose to behave that way. It's not on Dawn, the daughter, that person chose to behave that way. Dawn's not stupid or whatever. It's just we all go through these learning experiences. So Pamela realizes that she will disempower her daughter, Dawn, if she doesn't look at her daughter as a powerful person that was just learning a life lesson. And also seeing that Dawn, like holding that image, that emotional support system of what you believe, that my daughter's not a victim to this. My daughter is this powerful young lady that learned what she will not do again, because she deserves better than that. And she realizes that she can learn from that experience, not feel bad about it. She can have feelings about what happened, process that, but not hold on to it, right? Not feel victimized by it, not let it dictate her life in a negative way, or feel bad about and blame herself, just like Pamela was, right? In a different way. Blame herself like, oh, I feel stupid. I can't believe that happened. I can't believe I didn't see that he was lying or wasn't, being a good person. None of that's healthy for Dawn either. So if Dawn can just be empowered about it and say, I realized I will not allow someone like that in my life again. I am developing boundaries, and Dawn can learn from it and say, my boundaries are that maybe I handle it in this way, that I talk on the phone longer with them before we go out and hang out maybe with our friends, to view their behavior more so before I start dating them. And because you get a lot of interesting insights when you have social settings for a longer duration of time and try to just be friends before you start dating. So maybe Dawn's like, I realize I'm going to be their friend first. I'm going to have them around my friends, maybe be around their friends, and have a social setting, to kind of have more time to decide if I want to go beyond friends with this person and see what their character is like, how open is their heart in general when they interact with people? How emotionally available are they with people in general, with their friends, interacting? How kind do they appear to be? How emotionally intelligent do they appear to be? So all of these levels can be assessed in another way. So that empowers Dawn. So all of this empowers Dawn. So that's what I want to talk about with that. Blaming the self is an old pattern within our society that I think has been presented to make us feel like a good person. And I think men also blame themselves. I have to speak up for the men and speak up for everybody in between. Men, women, whatever gender. But let's just traditional male masculine role. I'm going to speak to that when I think oftentimes men, when they cannot live up to the societal unconscious ideal, belief, whatever you want to call it, that a man has to be strong in every moment, know what to do in every moment, and when they also feel like they came up short, that they may not do it as verbally. I think I've heard men throughout my lifetime sometimes say it, but also put themselves down on some level, that they feel because we had a very patriarchal society. I'm hoping it's becoming more balanced. I don't think it should be just one idea, like a patriarchal idea. I think there can be a balanced idea. But that power scheme and structure, which I believe can be shifted in a much more healthier way. Also, for men, I think it can also bring that idea that they fail if something falls apart, that they are overly responsible for the family at times. And I think it should be a balance thing. I think we should all work together, and it's unhealthy for us to blame and beat up on ourselves because of any societal unconscious belief that we may carry, that it should fall on any one person. And what is empowering is when we are compassionate and look at what we can learn from that situation, talk about it in a way where we are expressing that learning, talking about what we did that was a success. Talk more about the successes, because whatever you are putting out into the world, whatever you are verbalizing has power and creates an energy and motion in your life. So the more we can not look at these ideas of trying to be a perfect person, whether you're a man, a woman, whatever gender in between, if we feel like we fall short of these ideas, which are not emotionally intelligent ideas. They really are not. They're old concepts. So when we hold on to those kinds of concepts and then beat ourselves up internally, in our mind, in our emotional being, or even verbalize it sometimes, it allows people to see us as disempowered, not have healthy boundaries, creates an energy where kind of like a vacuum where abuse can come in, where people can take advantage of us, all kinds of, it creates this energetic vacuum where negativity can come to you. It projects negativity. When we are putting ourselves down verbally, it is projecting this negativity that beats us up, that makes us look like we could be easily victimized to bad people, to bullies. It is very unhealthy. So let's let it go. Let's let it go. So if we are always speaking to the most empowered idea, the most supporting our thoughts, emotional beliefs, and behavior in the most empowered way, speaking to what we got right and speaking to, and I am learning that I can do this next time. I am learning that next time I will do it this way and be so strong that it will be a situation where only a good person will be attracted to that moment. So there's a huge difference on how we communicate and how we communicate about the learning. And that should be the most powerful thing. Now, real quick before I finish, again, you're listening to Michelle Love with Dynamic Change on KPCA, and I am talking about the pattern of blaming, self-blame, and also blaming others. Now, real quick, I want to talk about blaming others. When we blame others, we are also not, I think it's good to hold others accountable, but we also need to look at, what do I need to learn? Not where we put ourselves down, but say, okay, how can I shift this into some sort of positive learning of, okay, acknowledging the feelings. That was very painful, whatever it was. You know, sometimes it's not a mild situation, sometimes it's a very intense situation, whatever it is. Say, acknowledge your feelings. I am entitled to having some feelings about what went down. Okay. And that was because of, you know, this dynamic. But what can I learn from this situation so it doesn't happen again? If we constantly blame other people, it can get in the way of the learning. We're entitled to having our feelings that come up. You want to heal the feelings, process the feelings, and then say, okay, now I can let it go. I don't need to hold on to this blame, which is like a really negative thing. You know what I mean? When we hold on to the blame of what someone else did or something like that, it's good to hold them accountable because that was their choice to do that. But we are holding on to the pain of that situation by holding on to blame. So if we let go of the idea that we need to blame anyone and just let it go, process the feelings, let it go. If you let go of the blame, you're letting go of the pain and negativity of that situation. And just instead, you know, so you want to look at them as, okay, they chose to behave that way, which is an empowered way to look at it. We hold them responsible, and I can empower myself with the reaction of, I will no longer have that person in my life. There we go. Let go of the blame, let go of the pain. I have learned that when people behave that way, that they don't deserve to be in my life. I will not be spoken to that way again. I will not, I will know what that behavior looks like. And I learned so much. I got so strong from that. And I realized what I want next time. That I am empowered because now I'm going to tell that person, you chose to treat me like this and like this and like this. And what I learned from that is that I will not, again, interact with you. You will not call me again. You will not text me again. I will not see you again. If I bump into you on the street, you better turn around. Otherwise, I am going to call you out on that behavior and, make it very obvious, and if there's other people around, I guess they're going to hear that, and even are witnesses to how much of a bully you have been, how much you put me down, how inconsiderate you were. And it does not hurt me anymore. I'm not going to hold on to that. But these are the reasons why I will not engage with you. And, it's like speaking a truth. It's not holding on to the pain. You deal with the feelings, so there's no more pain, but you speak to the truth of it. People hear the truth. They feel it in their bodies. They feel it. They feel it. So when you are calling someone out and setting that boundary and you're like, this is what happened. I am done with this kind of pattern with you, and this is why I will not speak to you anymore. It's like they will feel it. That person they're confronting, that person you're setting that boundary with, if there's someone that, happens to be standing right next to them in that moment and you had to do it in front of that person because that's how the situation played out. You weren't trying to do that on purpose, to have a witness, but sometimes it happens that way. But it's like speaking to, it's like a justice thing. You feel it in your body. It's true. It's like, I don't want to fight with you. I don't want to have negativity with you, but I am done with this dynamic. It empowers the whole situation. It empowers them to maybe make a better choice. It empowers them to look at themselves and their behavior. It empowers them to handle their own shadow side, their own, negativity. So you are empowering them to make a better decision, maybe. You are empowering yourself to have that boundary. You are empowering the situation by putting that truth out into the world, where I think it creates like an energy, like a vibration. You put that out there to change the dynamic, to expose it in a healthy, not a blaming, not a painful, letting it go so it can shift type of way. So powerful. So when we let go of the blame within ourselves, also what we project towards other people, and look at, where does the responsibility really lie? The responsibility lies on the person, the bully. The responsibility is for the bully to, maybe they do nothing with it, but the behavior is their responsibility. We're not stupid because it happened. We don't need to put ourselves down because it happened. Sometimes you cannot see things coming, and it's no one's fault. But, separating out the responsibility. So the bully is responsible for their choice of behaving that way. And if you look at it, okay, I'm just responsible for responding in the most empowered way I can, and problem solving and thinking of a healthy way to adapt the situation, then if you can bring that to the table, that is what that bully is going to feel. So even if we don't, necessarily say it to that person, there is this ripple effect. When we heal something within ourselves, the world feels it. And that's why I've always been the huge supporter and always putting out the idea, we are only responsible for our own healing as much as possible, because you can only really change yourself. And if you put the most amount of your energy, focus it on your healing, it is going to help heal everyone you come in contact with, because you're going to be handling your behavior, your boundaries in a way that is so much healthier that it forces other people to be more healthy. Which is fantastic. So my imaginary person I made up, Pamela, when she comes from this empowered place, she is acknowledging, I'm only responsible for myself and being the best parent I can towards the imaginary daughter, Dawn. And I'm not responsible for the boyfriend that hurt Dawn's behavior. So just separating out the responsibility. Dawn's not responsible for it either. Everyone did the best they could in that situation. But if we look at, I can be responsible for learning to handle it different, learning the most powerful response to this situation, learning how to empower, my daughter, for Pamela to empower her daughter, and empower Dawn to have a voice with this ex-boyfriend kind of situation, stand up for herself. Maybe she tells him, I don't appreciate what you did. This is what you did. And maybe Dawn, ends up confronting him in front of, the friend group. Sometimes that can be a really healthy thing. Sometimes if it's like, I think with teens or whatever, it's just really saying, look, that's not okay. And, you need to work on yourself. And sometimes as they're growing up and they're maturing, and I think supporting this kind of healthy dialogue, and them supporting them having this kind of dialogue sometimes within the friend group is really empowering, because then they get used to exposing behavior even within the friends and backing each other up, and not trying to hide, or not trying to hide behind their own embarrassment. I think anytime things can be just aired out really in a confident, strong way that's healthy, I think this is really powerful communication and a healthy way to engage with the people in our lives, with our friends, and I just think that not to do it in a shaming way in front of everybody, but to work on our communication skills where it's very honest, very emotionally articulate, and saying, I really felt this way when this happened. You can't do that again. Like, let's, whether it's in a friendship setting or whatever it is, a work setting, sometimes we really need to be able to say what we need to say. So anyway, I hope you have enjoyed my ideas about talking about the collective unconscious of how we beat up ourselves and blaming ourselves, blaming others, and how we could really let that go and respond in the most empowered way possible. And if you would like to listen to my future shows of dynamic change that I do every Wednesday here on KPCALP in Petaluma at 11 o'clock on Wednesdays to 12 o'clock, I upload all of them to my YouTube channel, which is Michelle Love with Dynamic Change and Wellness. And that's a YouTube station. And then you can always go to my website to see the different kind of classes I teach in my wellness coaching, which is dynamicchange.wellness.com. And you can email me if you want to have me talk about certain emotional, psychological patterns and how to problem solve with that. And I would like to share with you one of the shows we have here today at KPCALP in Petaluma, and it's called Reggae Radio. And this show is on Fridays from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And it's hosted by, I love this name, Zoro Drux. That is the best name. Zoro Drux. Total fun. Zoro, with his 20 years plus years as a DJ, brings his love and knowledge of reggae music to Reggae Radio every Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. With a focus on Jamaican-style reggae music, past and present, Reggae Radio hopes to educate you with the good vibes, keep you up to date on the local reggae scene, and ease you into the weekend. So relax and keep the irate vibes flowing. Special requests are always welcome. It sounds like a fantastic show. I personally love reggae. I think it has very good energy. So I appreciate you tuning in today. I hope you are enjoying all the weather. And I'm going to start having some guest speakers on my show. So next week, I am anticipating to have a guest speaker speak about martial arts and how that brought them wellness in their lives. And I'm very excited. So next week, I plan to have Fred Coleman on my show to talk about his lifelong engagement with martial arts and how that was a healing experience for him and brought him wellness. And so I'm very excited about that, and I will in the future be having more and more guests, because I like to talk about all the different aspects of how we can find wellness within our lives. And so please join me next week live here on KPCALP in Petaluma, a free range radio and TV station, for that guest speaker on martial arts and how that can create wellness in your life. I hope you enjoy the rain I think it's absolutely beautiful outside. It feels very calming, and have a wonderful week.